Okay, so you know that feeling, right? You're dragging. Your brain is foggy no matter how much sleep you get or how well you're eating. You
Mm,
just can't seem to shake it.
yeah.
Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into a possible hidden cause of low energy. We're going to talk about your mitochondria,
Yeah.
the microscopic world inside your cells, and the crucial role of B vitamins,
Yes.
especially thiamine, vitamin B1.
Exactly. Think of your mitochondria like tiny little power plants
Yeah.
inside every single one of your cells.
Okay.
Their main job to create this thing called ATP,
ATP.
adenosine triphosphate. It's the basic energy currency that your body uses for everything,
Right.
from thinking to moving your muscles. If those power plants aren't working properly, well, you're going to feel it.
And the big question we're exploring today is, could a deficiency in this often overlooked nutrient
Yeah.
be the key to unlocking your energy levels? We've been looking at some fascinating research on the connection between mitochondria,
Mm-hmm.
B vitamins, and fatigue. Our mission today is to extract the most important insights from this research
Yep.
and help you understand a potential root cause of why you might be feeling so run down. So first things first, how do these mitochondria actually generate ATP?
Basically, they take the fuel you provide,
Right.
primarily from the glucose in your food and the oxygen you breathe.
Right.
And through a complex series of biochemical steps, they convert it into ATP. Now, there's this crucial gateway in this process called the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex,
Pyruvate dehydrogenase complex.
or PDC for short. Think of it like the doorway.
Okay.
That allows energy from your food to enter the main energy-producing pathway
Hmm.
within the mitochondria.
So it's a pretty crucial doorway. What does the PDC actually do?
Its main role is to take pyruvate, which is
Oh.
what your body produces when it breaks down glucose,
Uh-huh.
and transform it into something called acetyl-CoA. This acetyl-CoA then feeds into the Krebs cycle, which is another vital stage in ATP production, inside the mitochondria. It's kind of like a car engine. You need to get the fuel into the combustion chamber
Yeah.
to make things go.
Okay.
If the PDC isn't functioning properly, that whole process can slow down or even stop.
Right.
And when that happens,
Yeah.
you guessed it, fatigue sets in. And potentially other health problems.
So the PDC is like the ignition switch for energy production.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, where does thiamine fit into all of this?
Well, the thiamine,
Yeah.
also known as vitamin B1, is absolutely essential for activating that PDC we were just talking about.
Right.
Without enough thiamine, that conversion of pyruvate into acetyl-CoA just can't happen efficiently. It's like having a car with a full tank of gas,
Right.
but a faulty ignition system. You've got the fuel,
Yeah.
but you can't start the engine.
So if you're not getting enough thiamine,
Right.
even if you're eating plenty of carbs for energy, your
Yeah.
body can't actually use that energy at the cellular level.
Exactly. And what happens when that pyruvate can't be converted, gets diverted down another metabolic pathway, and ends up being converted into lactate, leading to elevated lactic acid levels in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this buildup of lactate has been linked to all sorts of issues, metabolic problems, even some neurodegenerative conditions.
Wow. And the research of Dr. Derek Lonsdale and Dr. Chandler Mars, what have they discovered about thiamine deficiency?
Their work has been instrumental
Hmm?
in showing just how widespread
Hmm.
and how impactful even a subtle thiamine deficiency could be. They
Yeah.
call it subclinical deficiency. What's really interesting is that they suggest that many conditions, things like chronic fatigue syndrome and various neurological problems, might actually be rooted in this often overlooked lack of thiamine. It's not always a severe deficiency, like you might see in cases of malnutrition, but rather a low-level chronic shortage. That can still significantly impair mitochondrial function.
That's fascinating. So we've got our mitochondria, our cellular power plants, we've got the PDC, the ignition switch, and we've got thiamine, the key that turns that switch.
But what else can go wrong with this system, besides just a lack of thiamine?
Well, there are actually several factors
Hmm.
that can hinder mitochondrial function and prevent the PDC from doing its job.
Okay.
Obviously, thiamine deficiency itself is a big one, like we've been discussing. Without enough B1, the glucose you eat isn't being efficiently converted into usable energy.
Right.
Now, good sources of thiamine include things like pork, whole grains, legumes, and nuts.
Okay.
But a lot of processed foods are really low in thiamine, so it's easy to see how a diet high in processed foods could lead to a deficiency.
Yeah. It really makes you think about what we're putting into our bodies.
It does. And then there's magnesium.
Magnesium.
Magnesium is actually needed to activate thiamine in your body.
Oh,
So
interesting.
even if you're getting the thiamine through your diet or supplements, if your magnesium levels are low, you might not be able to use that thiamine effectively. So it's not just about one nutrient, it's about the interplay between them.
Exactly. And then we have to talk about blood sugar.
Yeah, blood sugar is always a big topic when we talk about energy levels.
It is. And blood sugar dysregulation in either direction can really mess with your mitochondrial function.
Okay.
Hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, means your mitochondria simply don't have enough fuel to work with.
Right.
On the other hand, insulin resistance, which is often associated with high blood sugar, can also negatively impact how glucose is metabolized and taken up by your cells, which ultimately hinders your mitochondrial function.
So it's a delicate balance.
It really is. And then there are things outside of diet that can impact mitochondrial health, like certain pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, the research mentioned that.
Things like fluoroquinolone antibiotics.
Yeah.
Ciprofloxacin, for example, have been shown to damage mitochondrial DNA.
Right.
And then heavy metals, like arsenic, mercury, and aluminum, can also disrupt cellular energy production. They interfere with those vital biochemical reactions that are happening inside the mitochondria.
So we've covered a lot of ground on what can go wrong. But the section on the cell danger response, or CDR, was really fascinating to me. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. The cell danger response is a theory proposed by Dr. Robert Naviaux, and it offers a really interesting perspective on chronic fatigue and other complex conditions.
Okay.
Basically, the idea is that when your cells sense a threat, whether it's from toxins, infections, and injury, or even just metabolic stress, your mitochondria can shift their primary focus. Instead of mainly producing energy, they go into a sort of protective mode, survival mode. It's like if your cells were a house, and the house has an alarm system. When there's a threat, the alarm goes off, and energy gets diverted to security measures.
So the mitochondria prioritize defense over energy production.
Right. They start ramping up things like inflammation and immune activation to deal with the perceived danger. Now, in the short term, this is a normal and beneficial response.
Yeah.
But the problem is when this CDR gets stuck in the on position, what was supposed to be a temporary protective mechanism becomes chronic. And the mitochondria continue to prioritize defense over energy production.
And that leads to
fatigue, brain fog, metabolic problems, like that house alarm we were talking about, getting stuck on, and constantly draining resources that could be used for other things.
Right. So it's not just an energy deficit, it's a cellular defense system that's gone haywire. So knowing all of this, what can our listeners do to support their mitochondrial health?
Well, the first thing is to focus on eating thiamine-rich foods.
Like what?
We talked about pork, beef liver, if you're into that sort of thing. Sunflower seeds are a great source. And, of course, whole grains.
Okay, good to know. What about supplementation? Are there any specific types of thiamine supplements that you recommend?
Well, if you think you might have a deficiency, or you're dealing with persistent fatigue that hasn't responded to other things, then exploring thiamine supplementation might be worth considering. Benfotiamine and thiamine HCl are two forms that are commonly used, but it's always best to talk to a healthcare professional to figure out the right form and dosage for you.
That's really good advice. And we can't forget about magnesium.
Right. Boosting your magnesium intake is key. Dark leafy greens like spinach and kale are great sources, as well as nuts and seeds. Magnesium supplements are also an option. But again, it's good to get some guidance from a professional.
And how about minimizing our exposure to those mitochondrial toxins we talked about?
Absolutely. That means reducing your intake of processed foods.
Right.
Being aware of potential heavy metal exposure in your environment, and really only taking medications when absolutely necessary, and under the guidance of a doctor.
And finally, blood sugar balance.
Yes, avoiding high sugar diets and processed carbs. That can spike your blood sugar is really important for healthy glucose metabolism and ultimately for healthy mitochondrial function.
So, to wrap things up, it seems that these tiny powerhouses in our cells, our mitochondria, are absolutely vital to our energy levels.
They are.
And this nutrient that we might not think much about, thiamine, plays a really crucial role in keeping them running smoothly.
It does. And when you're struggling with that persistent fatigue, that brain fog that just won't lift, it's worth considering that the answer might not be just getting more sleep or reducing stress, although those are important too, of course.
Right.
But maybe, just maybe, taking a closer look at the health of your mitochondria
Okay.
and your B vitamin intake
Uh-huh.
could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
It really makes you think about the engines of your own life, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the factors that might be affecting your energy levels? And is there anything you can do to support your mitochondrial health?
Right.
That's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
My pleasure.